The transition to commercial real estate was a very long process because I had hit that financial freedom number through residential, but I didn't feel satisfied and I didn't feel like my talents were being used in a early retirement or semi-retirement rate. I saw that not a lot of people knew about industrial real estate too, so I saw kind of an open field. And luckily, I'm very, very glad to be landed in industrial real estate because it suits my personality a little bit more. And that's mainly because of triple net leases. Triple net leases actually seemed fake to me. It was like, it doesn't make sense. Why would anybody do this? Because it is a landlord's dream.
As an investor, not being in the commercial brokerage game before, how are you pounding the pavement, getting into deals? All right, well, welcome everybody. So this is the CRE Arena, and today we have an incredible guest, Deren Huang, who is a man of many trades, but man, he's a man of faith. He's a father, he's a husband, and he's a commercial real estate investor, but I'll let him dig into that. But man, first off, Deren, thank you so much, man.
Hey, thank you for the invite. I really appreciate it.
Yeah. Absolutely, man. So, so to start off, I'd like to just get into, what's like, what is it that you do? Like, what would you say? Like, what's your job? What do you show up to work, and what do you do every day?
Yeah. So I'm a industrial investor, industrial real estate investor, and I transitioned last year from residential solely. So in 2016, I actually got licensed thinking that I was going to be a broker on the residential scale. But it wasn't until 2017 I made my first residential single-family investment, and I caught the bug and slowly tried to transition fully to the investor side of things instead of just being a broker. And then in 2022, I transitioned from residential to commercial, specifically industrial.
Gotcha, man. That's awesome. So, but you were you were an agent before that. So you were getting your brokerage license, and then you said you did get it, but then you didn't actually become a broker, or?
Yeah. So the first couple of transactions, I was thinking, I was just kind of copying the playbook of The Millionaire Real Estate Agent by Gary Keller. So I was like, okay, well, here's my path. I want to make these commissions. I want to build out a team. I want to start a brokerage or something along those lines. But the residential style of selling and that business didn't really suit my skills well. A lot of it is emotional. It is a lot of social interaction, not just lead generation, not just cap rates and NOI and stuff like that. So I was busy emotionally selling some of these. Hey, where do you see your family? Do you like the granite color? Do you like the wall color? And it's really not my cup of tea. I did that for about a year, pretty heavily. And then I picked up that first investor client, and he showed me the ropes of the single family investing. And I loved it because at the time I wasn't married, or excuse me, I didn't have children. So I had all the time in the world. So I just spent 12 hours underwriting, showing the numbers, everything. And that side of my brain kind of fully clicked on. I said, oh, wow, he doesn't care that the granite color is this or the wall color is this. Most likely he's doing a renovation. He cares about the numbers, cash flow, and, the area appreciation, stuff like that. So basically it was an unlimited client, and I just kind of went ham from that point on.
Yeah, went ham. Oh man, I haven't heard that in a while. So that's funny, man. I love that you just said that. Just went ham. That was actually like my gamer tag back in the day, like Xbox 360 was Augie goes ham, and like That's funny, man. I love that you just said that. So, well, cool, man. That's a cool story of getting into it. And so, like, to even backtrack, like, there's a lot to like unpack and dig into there. But like, even before that, if you could tell me like a little bit about like, and your upbringing, and if your parents were investors, or like, what was your upbringing, and what was that like, and like what got you to the point, of starting to do real estate.
Yeah, so starting to do real estate, I would say when I vocationally decided to become a broker or start in the real estate business, I was doing a sales job. So I was B2B sales, selling like cell phones and connected devices to businesses. And what I hated was the commission reset every single month. And I felt like so anxious and so much filled with so much anxiety. I wanted to be my own boss and then actually not have like a reset of commission. But I was maybe top 2 or 3% of the company, still doing really well, but mental health had a big toll. I was still working, weird hours, and once again, didn't love it. So I thought, hey, why don't I be my own boss? And at least then I can kind of dictate some of that stress. As we both know in the real estate world, like it's probably more stressful. But I didn't know that at the time. But even before that, my parents weren't really into real estate. I think my mom kind of got a resurgence when I actually left for college. I think that was my first foray into real estate. But now she does invest alongside of me. She has a couple single family homes that I've helped them with.
Wow.
But I just honestly, it was HGTV, a little bit of bigger pockets, and just trying to make the jump into real estate.
Yeah. No, that's awesome, man. And that's really cool that your mom's doing it now too. So I mean, when you got to that point and you said, hey, like I want to start, investing in real estate, even before like, I don't know at what point to like dig into this here, but for like making that transition, because a big theme on this podcast and show is like we want to, like the listeners, we want to help them become better wherever they're at and like ultimately become better in commercial real estate, build more wealth, have financial freedom, and be better at whatever they do, all along the lines of commercial real estate. Excuse me. So with making that transition, like maybe it's from, realtor to investor or from like residential investor to industrial investor, like what, how long did you like contemplate that? Like how long did you have that fear, or like was there any fear like going from here to there? Like what was the scariest part of that?
Yeah, I would say for the very first investment, those are always the scariest. But I was lucky because I was in the business and I had, that investor that kind of showed me a full cycle, a couple of them actually, before I jumped into it. So I loved having that experience. Almost, I call him a sideways mentor. But he was able to show me all the numbers, all the books, and the renovations and everything. So basically, that first time I helped him, I helped him buy the house, so I got the commission. But then he showed me, hey, listen, we did $20,000 worth of renovation. I got a renter in there in 3 days because it was such a desirable school district. And then here's the bank note that I got, and he showed me a full cycle BRRRR deal. It took a two or three of those to actually see in that, it wasn't just on paper. It was like real in front of my eyes that he showed me how to do that kind of model. Yeah. And that gave me the courage. But it was still like sleepless nights before that first one. So I was like, oh my gosh, the insurance, everything, you have to check box everything to make sure that it will be a good investment. But yeah, that first investment, I actually took basically all the savings that I was going to have for my first home, and we're still living in an apartment at that time, and we bought an investment property before we bought our actual, primary home. And so, yeah. But once again, just getting the reps in and actually seeing full, like real in front of your eyes and actually being a part of it, what was the courage that I needed to actually jump into that first residential one.
No, that's great, man. And don't worry, people are still, even the most experienced investors are still losing sleepless nights over insurance. So, that's still very much a theme in today's market. But so for that transition, and like, man, that's such a cool story. And talk, I appreciate you digging into like some of the fears of that, but like what, if this makes sense, like what fear was like not worth it? So what was something that like once you got on the other side of it, you were just like, I can't believe I was afraid of that. Is it like actually the acquisition or like the financing or like finding the deal or like finding the tenant or, like maybe the construction? Like what on the other side were you just like, I can't believe I was scared of that?
Yeah, so it's actually a funny story. We mentioned insurance. I know in Florida it is probably a lot more aggressive than it is in Oklahoma, just based on everything that's happened. But that first actual, I wholesaled and, I helped people find residential properties as an agent. But the first time I actually got something under contract for myself, I asked for an insurance quote, and they underwrote it as I was living in there. So a lot of personal property, different things like that. And so it was at the point where it was like $60, made or break a deal. And, now knowing it was so silly, it's such a good deal. Hindsight's 2020. But I actually gave up that deal because I think the insurance came in like $60 higher than I was expecting, and I was like, these numbers don't work. Different things like that. I would say, when it comes to investing, you don't need to be fully experienced to actually make a huge impact on your net worth and the financial side of things. Me having no experience within real estate, got my broker's license. I had no upbringing in construction or finance or anything along those lines. When I was brought up in my life, it was, almost a Dave Ramsey style. Debt is bad, money is bad, almost too. If we want to get into that, biblical principles of like, lose your life, and different things like that. So I was scared of it, but just diving into some of those things, like I just want to encourage people that like, even if I can do it and I took that leap, you can do it too. Now, you don't need to be wishy-washy about it and don't have the underwriting or due diligence. No, you have to do everything. But for me, what felt safe, and you'll see this even in the industrial side when I transition, was I had to see to believe, and I had to kind of get a couple, like at least shadow a couple people or have someone sideways mentor me through a couple deals to actually see that and understand that it was actually true and that it does build wealth, and kind of one of those things too.
Yeah, no, that's great, man. And I remember us talking about it at one point, probably 12 months ago, but you were like, hey, like if I was commercial real estate brokerage, like you would have gotten to that first, or like industrial real estate brokerage to like, as in like, hey, because that's what I tell people all the time that are, getting into commercial real estate, because most people want to be investors. It's like, man, I believe that, hey, the brokerage side of the business, like you can get the knowledge, the expertise, you can sit co-pilot, man. That's been one of the best things is like, I've been co-pilot to guys that have been in this business for like 30, 40 years and done billions of dollars of transactions. And like, and ultimately like in the brokerage business, like we're paid very well to like help those guys and do those type of deals. So like we're not only getting the knowledge, but we're also like being compensated very very well for it. And then also like I think another thing is like the access to deals. And this is kind of like, what I want to talk to you about is like when tapping into these different markets. I mean, I know you even said you were like wholesaling some stuff, like, or helping with investors doing that. And when you were on the brokerage side, but as you've went to the investment side, without, giving away your secret pipeline. But like, what are the best ways that like you're sourcing deals and when somebody's getting into it, because I know from a commercial real estate brokerage perspective, like we're on the front lines of all the deals kind of already. But like as an investor, not being in the commercial brokerage game before, then like, how are you pounding the pavement, getting into deals? Is it strictly through brokers or, your own source or, how's that going down?
Yeah. So that's a really interesting take, and that's kind of one of the things that I learned in the residential world that I kind of translated into the commercial world. Is that one of the kind of mistakes that I made was that I got licensed and I was only working for myself, and so instead of actually networking within other brokers that had other deals or wholesalers in the residential world, I was just like kind of an island and the single source of deal flow. Now in the commercial world, I've made it a very tangible thing. And I said, hey, listen, if you bring something to me off market, you're going to get the full commission. I'm not going to split anything, even though I do have a license. And so the differentiation when I made the jump into commercial real estate was that I was going to expand my broker network, not just, on the front lines of, property owners too. But, to answer the question of my deal flow, it really comes in two different ways. One is the brokerage world. And, the ways that I got into that, specifically here in Tulsa, is I joined two particular groups that meet on a monthly basis. One is NAIOP. It stands, the acronym is no longer used, but it's the development, like commercial real estate development group. They have a monthly breakfast, and I was going there, meeting all the brokers, meeting all the developers, meeting all the service providers, architects, bankers, different things like that, and getting face-to-face with them. And the second group was the CCIM group, certified something investor member or something like that, but they have a monthly luncheon.
Yeah.
And so I joined that, and I was able to get FaceTime with brokers that do millions and millions and millions of dollars of deal flow. And so one, that broker network that does bring me either off market or I'm able to get into buildings as soon as possible. That is one of the ways of deal flow. The second is I still do source off market deals, and sometimes in very peculiar ways that most brokers aren't looking. So I from my residential days, I uncover all the stones under, all the rocks. So Facebook Marketplace, Craigslist. I actually bought an industrial deal off of Craigslist, and then of course hitting the phones, cold calling, and letters now. So we're hitting all angles. But first, I think if I've talked to a lot of like kind of institutional or sub-institutional people. They really rely on that broker network. And I think that I'm sure it'll be like an 80-20 principle where we do source most of our deals from our broker network.
Yeah, no, that's good, man. And that's kind of like the people you're trying to get around. It's like, where do they all congregate? Because you can make these one-off coffee connections, but like it's going to take a long time. Or you can go to one, and it's like you got 50. So
Yeah.
kind of the power hour there. So no, that's really cool. When in this process, like, man, what would you say, like, in today's market, in the past 6 months, 9 months for you, like, what's been the biggest challenge that you've faced? Obviously, there's been a little bit of a turning conversation, but I mean, industrial real estate is still, incredibly strong, and most good markets are. But like I said, especially on the residential side, just a little bit different of a flavor with interest rates and deal activity. So, what's been the biggest challenge for you for the past, like, 6-9 months or so?
Yeah, so financing is going to be the hot topic because the interest rates sharply rose. So I'm having to bring more liquidity to deals and have higher rates and get cut off on a lot of different things. Even though we have some really great networks and relationships, we can get face to face with vice presidents and presidents of banks locally here at credit unions and stuff like that. It's still really, really tough. Yeah. And even I would say half of them are just pencils down, like, hey, thank you, but no thank you. And they won't even give us a 50% LTV loan, even if we ask for it. And so making those relationships have been really, really key. It's dialed down to 2 or 3 banks that we just kind of knock on their door and kind of go from there. So that's the first thing. The second thing is this is one of the aspects of industrial real estate is that there are owner occupants in the world of industrial. If you think of multifamily, you can't live in 200 apartment units at one time, but an owner user can fill 100,000 square feet pretty easily, and those happen all the time. And so, at least here in Tulsa, the owner occupants will pay a higher price point per square foot than an investor. And so I'm battling with people that want to house their business, that have profitable businesses, even in recessions, and battling those guys to get the actual decent assets too. So those are kind of two things. But I try not to focus on the negative, but I try to play into the strengths of the what we can do about those.
Yeah, no, that's great, man. That's great insight. That's kind of the spectrum of, who will pay the most for a piece of property. There's a spectrum of like a speculator will pay the least. I don't know what I'm going to do with the property. An investor will, probably be in the middle of the road there, where it's like, hey, they want to make a margin on the property. But then a user, it's like, hey, they can buy the property and put it into productive use. When like you're looking at a return, but they're looking at, you're looking at return on cash, but they're looking at like return on like market share and like the growth of their employees and all those things. So like they're really, willing to stretch that much more because they know they can make it back by however good their product or service is. But like you can't necessarily charge more rent than like what the market will bear. So really, really good stuff there. From this like line of deals that you've done, from what I've seen, it was single family, and then I want to say there was a mobile home park or two in there, and then it's been industrial real estate. So like the differences between them. So like, talk to me a little bit about like how was the single family game and what you saw there and why you moved up. How was the mobile home park game? That's one I'm even more interested in. And then also like, hey, how's it now? Where you've landed in industrial.
Yeah, yeah. So, when I first was starting to invest in single families, it was really just based on what was shown to me. I'm sure if the guy showed me, his name is Curtis, if Curtis showed me, a retail strip center or an office building, just seeing, completed stuff and adding that to the Rolodex, I would have jumped into whatever basically he was doing. But single family, I would say, it's been interesting. I've been thinking about it. Was really kind of self-serving. At the time, I was having bigger pockets and 4-hour work week and different things like that, and I was trying to figure out what I wanted to do. And so basically the single family investment world for me was just a number. How do I get this cash flow to get, quote unquote financial freedom and, potentially work just a 4-hour work week or something along those lines. And so I kept chasing this number and then hiring on this person and then the next number. And then, okay, so now, I have the financial freedom, but I don't have the time freedom. And I was just kind of battling that. The transition to commercial real estate, it was a very long process because I had hit that financial freedom number through residential, but I didn't feel satisfied and I didn't feel like my talents were being used in a early retirement or semi-retirement rate. And so, I made the commitment when jumping into commercial real estate that I was actually going to help other people invest alongside of me or help people along their journey. And so as usually for me, I try to think of how much work it will take, different things like that. But, in the commercial industrial world, I want to take on capital. I want to help people be able to get great returns and invest in assets that they would normally not be able to and stuff like that. But that transition from residential to commercial was a really, really big one. In 2022, when I was thinking about that transition, and I was still thinking about like, oh, do I really want to commit to this and help other people and take on investor capital? And that's another layer of just headache factor and a lot of diligence too. I was initially thinking, because I had done a smaller mobile home park just on the residential side. Okay, maybe I can combine maybe some affordable housing or something along those lines. But yeah, I was just kind of all over the place. So there was a sale leaseback that I was pursuing. There was a hotel conversion that I was pursuing, a 96 apartment complex that I was pursuing. So I was just like kind of all over the place just because all I thought and what I was trying to pursue was, helping other people out, being able to take outside capital and different things like that. And luckily, I'm very, very glad to be landed in industrial real estate because it suits my personality a little bit more so than, the residential style. And that's mainly because of triple net leases.
No, I love that, man. That you said two things there that I wanted to dig in on real quick. First one was just really quick and more agreeing with you than anything. The industrial sector. That's what I tell people whenever they are trying to pick a niche. First off, I tell people to like scratch the itch. So like me personally, when I was getting into the game, I was listening to a lot of Bigger Pockets and Grant Cardone, and it was all multifamily. And so I got a taste there and was like, wasn't just kept moving and stopped at shopping centers and did some deals there. But then when I landed in industrial, I was just like, man, like these are my people. Like I like these guys, because it doesn't have to be, they don't care what the floors look like. They don't care what, they're just very simple people. And a lot of these businesses, like, it's manufacturing, it's distribution. Like if there's a little dirt and rust on it, like, hey, that's completely understandable. They just need a small office. Hopefully it's air conditioned. And then, it's like the rest of it just kind of is what it is. It's a big rusty box in some case, and people are perfectly okay with that. So like, I absolutely loved that about industrial. And then one of the things, actually, before I go back to this, I want to touch on mobile homes real quick. So the mobile home deal that you did, like, if you wouldn't mind, like, hey, tell us about that one. And like I said, I'm just interested in that area. What, and not from like really from a personal investment standpoint, but just like, I know industrial well, but for the mobile home side of the business, like, I've done a few of those deals, but like, how did that one come about for you? Because I know that was like one of the earlier deals, right? So like, how did that come about, and like, how did that deal go, and what were some of the pros and cons to that, and how'd that go?
Yeah, yeah. So I'm still in the thick of it because we are maybe positioning it for a disposition. But basically, it came from a referral of mine, and this was when Brandon Turner was he was on the Bigger Pockets podcast, getting every mobile home person on there, and I was like, yes, mobile home parks are the next best thing. And so it came from a referral of mine, and it's a 25 unit mobile home park, and it's actually mixed use. There's some apartments on there, and there's some mobile homes. And I did it incorrectly. I made every mistake in the book because I kept all the homes, and instead of trying to yeah, so I'm a proud owner. Well, now it's
Yeah.
13 homes, but I'm a proud owner of 13 mobile homes. I still have the title to them. I do all the maintenance to them. I have all the tenants and the turnovers and all the headaches based on that. But realistically, the scale mobile homes, you just want to own the dirt and have the pad and the pad rent come to you, and it's relatively passive in that. So I made a big mistake by keeping all the homes, renting those out, fixing them up, and not doing a rent to own or a contract for deed. But that deal was at a very critical time in my career because I was able to hire a lot of help based on the gross rents of that particular property. And so that took me from, I think, 23 units, and then once again, plus 25, a little close to 50 units. And, I was able to afford some people there, some outside help, accountant, different things like that, and just kind of pad that as a loss leader for me, and just to add those units and add that velocity and scale. And so, like I said, I did it incorrectly, but we're turning those around. We're selling a couple of those homes and getting different things like that. During COVID, RVs, a lot of people were traveling. A lot of people bought RVs, and there was a shortage of that because of the demand of consumers. So we actually have a couple lots in the front that are RV lots too. And so there's a lot of different moving parts. It is the least sophisticated thing because it's 25 units. It's really small. It is on city water, city sewer, different things like that. So we made all the mistakes on the book. It is still profitable though, but it takes a lot of time. And so we're actually probably going to do a disposition on it. So yeah.
Yeah, that's awesome, man. No, that's good to hear, and it sounds like you've made some money, but you've gained a lot of knowledge, and that's going to help you go and grow that much further. So that's really cool, and so like for that type of deal, I mean those are great, man. And then for industrial real estate, so I don't want to say you've already touched on this. I don't think so, unless I'm like short-term memory loss here. But so like your first shot at industrial. So like what was the first industrial deal, and like because at that point, I mean, I guess for that was probably the point that you were opened up to triple net leases. Not just owning the mobile home, but so from that point, like obviously when everybody learns about a triple net lease, it's a landlord's dream. But like what was that first deal look like? What would that look like, and kind of how'd that come about, and then why are you committed to that space?
Yeah, yeah. So it's really funny. Initially, when I was learning about the different styles of investing, triple net leases actually seemed fake to me. It was like, it doesn't make sense. Why would anybody do this? Because it is a landlord's dream. And so the triple net leases that I was familiar with was just like, CVS or Walgreens, very low yield, credit tenant, and, the price point per square foot doesn't make sense by any means, even on a hard corner in a busy street. And so when I heard about industrial and that the triple net leases were very common in industrial, I was like, okay, let's see this, because some of the criteria that I have for investing is like, I want it value add. I want it, cash on cash is one of the more, the ways that I invest for cash flow. And then, I saw that not a lot of people knew about industrial real estate too. So I saw kind of an open field to really kind of be able to influence it in a well manner and add a value in that aspect. So that first deal, I was looking for a safe deal because I wasn't familiar with industrial. So definitely wasn't going to go develop it, wasn't going to go take on a spec project. So the initial first one that I looked at was a sale leaseback, but that actually failed. And so the actual one that I first purchased was just one with a lease attached to it. And I actually mentioned to it for a Craigslist because I found it on Craigslist, unsophisticated buyer or seller, excuse me. He was trying to sell it on Craigslist. He had it listed with a broker about a year and a half ago. Then he found like a buddy to lease it out to on a triple net scale. And then he actually recently had a heart attack. And so he was kind of up in age. He said, listen, this triple net lease, it's great cash flow, but I want to, experience the money now, even though I have to pay taxes on it. So we made a really great deal. It actually landed at a 10.9 cap, so almost 11 cap, just based on that, the actual property, the lease was like kind of squashed down because the actual tenant improved it so much. So the price point per square foot on the lease was really, really low compared to what it was because the tenant actually probably improved it about $500,000. So it kind of checkboxed all the things that felt safe to me. Really great cash on cash return. Even though it was a shorter lease, I think it had about a year and a half left on a 3-year lease, but the option was most likely a high percentage of the option being exercised for another 3 years. And then, once again, unsophisticated seller too. So kind of checked all the boxes to hit the high cash flow, really safe investment, and kind of go from there. So that was the first industrial investment.
No, that's cool, man. And yeah, whenever tenants commit that much money to a space, like that they're pretty committed. And even past the 3-year point, like have you passed the 3-year option now? Are you over that?
Yeah, so I bought that about a year ago ish now, and so about a month ago they already sent the renewal. So they were going to exercise the option and commit another 3 years to it. Yeah, so
gotcha. That's cool. So for one of the things you mentioned was and I wanted to ask about because I know NAIOP is a pretty big development association. They do a lot of stuff there. Have you got any plans for development? Have you like dabbled at all in that realm? And like, what's your thoughts on like industrial development?
yeah. So every time I go to the meeting, I'm like, yeah, I want to develop. And we just had like our Deal of the Year awards with some developers. So I'm like, oh my gosh, these guys are so great. And, I've networked with a couple people. There's a guy that's building a Sprouts, has an anchor tenant of Sprouts, grocery anchored retail. So I'm like, oh my gosh, this is amazing. You're amazing and stuff like that. So I would say that I'm cautiously optimistic within the development side of things. Right now, it's interesting. One of the largest developers of Oklahoma is Pencils Down. They're not developing anything right now. They have a different style of development. It is the concrete tilt-up, national credit, 30, 32 foot, 40 foot clear, big, big stuff. And then there is a big REIT that just developed and delivered about 600,000 square feet in Tulsa. And so, if I was to take on anything, I would be interested in a local style, red iron metal kind of building to more contractor based light industrial flex, because I feel like that is not being delivered to Tulsa. And I think that, there's a couple people here and there that are delivering smaller stuff, add-on stuff, different things like that. But I think for me, it would take a perfect whirlwind of the land is going to be either contributed to or, is pretty cheap. A lot of the general contractors and the brokers and all this other stuff have the vision of that. So when it comes to development for me, I think it's still a little ways out. I think there's a lot of opportunities in existing buildings and really creative things too. The last 2 deals that we did was actually a seller carryback or a partial carryback in the second position. And so there's a lot of relationships that you can make being face-to-face and being the end principal buyer that kind of helps stack the deck in your favor and make win-win situations with owner occupants or different things like that.
Yeah, no, that's great, man. And I think from my experience, staying focused on, what this goes for any business venture and things, but like, staying focused until you're at the point of, where like you've done things extremely, extremely well and like built a sizable portfolio where it's like, hey, now we can go start to, and things are streamlined, and hey, it's like now we can go start to add on other things, like synergies, like management, development, and some people even get into like the leasing services and things like that if they already have the management and all that. But that's the development game is a complete different world. So personally, man, I bought a piece of land and was like gung ho. Like I was like, I'm gonna develop it, dude. Like for sure. I'm definitely gonna develop it. Um, went back and forth with the county a few times and over like 12, 18 months, long time. And like, just what it takes to develop a piece of property versus buying existing. Cause now I've done both. Well, I haven't developed yet, to spill the story, but like I had the piece of property and bought it and planned on developing it and very quickly found out that this is a whole different animal than buying existing. And so, yeah, long story short, actually, gonna sell the piece of land. So that's how that one ended up. But getting into that game is a completely different animal. But yeah, the guys that are set up well and can do it, like there's obviously a lot of opportunity there, but just kind of a completely different animal. So completely
Yeah.
agree with you there, brother. So as far as it goes for like the outlook, I mean, of like, hey, what's the next say 5 years, like what's the next 3 to 5 years look like for you, and what are some of the goals maybe you have for yourself, or what direction are you headed in? It sounds like we know it's industrial real estate, but what are some of the goals you have for yourself around that, and where you're headed?
Yeah, it's interesting because it doesn't definitely change every single day, but a lot of things have shifted based on just different partnerships and different things like that. Right now, we're super committed, hyper focused to industrial real estate in Tulsa, Oklahoma, where we live. In the next 3 to 5 years, I can see us going to maybe Oklahoma City and Northwest Arkansas, just keeping it within hour and a half drive. But then we'll have to really build out a broker network within each city, because we won't be able to handle some of the things that we're doing right now, including the leasing, the financing, all the management, different things along those lines, and especially since we do value add, the construction side of things. So, I'm definitely taking that slow, but right now we're completely focused within Tulsa, Oklahoma, and the industrial, most likely what we call the light flex or Class B or contractor based style, where it is a little bit more fast moving. Although, I love the triple net leases, I still have some big triple net leases. I think there's a lot of opportunity in the sub-institutional, non-credit tenant, world of industrial. The maintenance is lower because it's basically a large garage, so you don't really spend that much money on tenant turnovers, different things along those lines. And then once
Yeah.
again, being able to get face to face with the actual seller, whether they're retiring or it is a landlord that is local, is going to be really key to get a win-win situation, especially now that financing is tight. Like I mentioned before, the past two deals that we did, the owner carried back. So we actually have a bank note at 50% LTV because that's all they were comfortable with. And then we have the seller in the second position, and then we're putting in, a couple $100,000 of renovations and different things like that. So it is a win-win situation. But guess what? They got their cake. They're eating it too. Industrial real estate is still really hot too, and has still year on year increased, or at least on the past 2 years, increased 40% year on year. I think that is going to squash down closer to 30 something, but still very, 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 very good. And inventory is tight too. So, I would say we do want to start syndicating. Right now, we've just done high-level JVs with friends and family, that everybody's contributing and pulling in effort. And then the next is to take on, passive investors through syndication. And then maybe in 5 years, if we do expand, getting a fund model set up. But, we're not even worried about that right now. We're just trying to get the track record, get some really great leases, and make win-win situations with sellers.
No, that's great, man. And that's one thing I'll say about you is like what I've noticed is you're very focused. You're very focused, but you're also like you're focused and intentional, but like also you're patient as well. I think a lot of people are they struggle with and not to say that I don't, but like want to going too hard too fast and like grow too big. I think, and a lot of people do it for like the wrong reasons in a sense. It's like, hey, how big's the portfolio? Because you can see everybody on Instagram or like on Bigger Pockets. It's like, hey, I got 1,000 units or like $100 million portfolio, and like it's just a weird flex. And I mean, I think for you, man, it seems that you really like you've started to buy small industrial deals, and like that's what they've been. They've been smaller industrial deals, but at the same time, like we say they're smaller, but we're talking like, five, seven, $10,000 a month in cash flow and these things, and like that's not a small amount of money, especially coming from the residential of like the $500 a month in cash flow. But I think people kind of fall into a weird trap of like, hey, if you don't have 1,000 units or 500 or like 10, 50, $100 million portfolio, then like that's then like you're not good. You're not actually doing it. So like, I mean, how do you combat that? And like, as far as like, you are incredibly patient and very intentional. So like, what are some of the things you're doing to like combat that like that comparison and just like, hey, I'm staying in this lane. I'm focused. I'm like, I'm building it brick by brick. Like how are you staying committed to that? But also like, where does that come from? Do you think is that your upbringing, or is that just who you are? Maybe your wife, has the reins on you pretty well. Like, uh, how are you doing that?
Yeah, I think it's the thing. I mean, it's a double-edged sword because, I really believe in the next 2 to 3 years that operators are going to win. Those that have really great operations are going to win. So, you can be the best acquisition person, but if rates are as high as they are and banks are only lending at 50% LTV, it's going to be really hard to make things happen. And so I would say one of two things. One, double-edged sword is that I do a lot of the work, even on the nitty-gritty scale. Like I'm still leasing out 1,500 square foot bays and stuff like that for $1,000 a month or whatever they are. And so I don't mind pulling up my sleeves and rolling up my sleeves to do some of those jobs to really kind of boost the percentage and the cash on cash return. That is a double-edged sword because a lot of my investors and even myself, I'm used to really great returns based on that. I'm not subbing everything out, and then once again the operation style of things. If we can have a really good reign on the operations, we're getting, like I said, a 10.9 cap, which is unheard of. And so even with the financing where they're at, and even with a shorter lease, as long as we get and use the strengths that I have and that I've been able to cultivate and that are just given to me talent-wise from the Lord, just leaning into those, I'm really going to be able to get great returns for other people and myself too, and have life-giving a career. And so I would say the discipline factor is just that I used to be, and even as you said, like even when I shared the story, I tried to do a motel conversion, I tried to do an office space conversion and a 96 apartment complex. When I actually boil down the skill set that I have, triple net leases are literally fake. Like I don't understand, like they're just a gift, because if you don't love the granite color and the big, HGTV and shiplap and stuff like that, and you just like garages, then industrial real estate is really the way to go. And then, if you don't want the yield of a Walgreens, that's a 3 cap, 4 cap, probably a little bit higher now, then you're able to do value add components to triple net leases, and I think that's industrial real estate. And so the discipline factor is that I'm spoiled. I have a great operations. I got a great team behind me locally. And then two, the returns that we have and the face-to-faceness that we can get. That's not a word, but we can get face-to-face. We're local people. It really gets outsized returns based on those things. And so I'm, hesitant to go to Oklahoma City and Northwest Arkansas. I think we will have to, because Tulsa just has about 140, 150 million square feet of industrial. So, we'll have to balance the portfolio in years to come. So, yeah.
Yeah, gotcha. And you mentioned the team. So what before we go, what was the team build out? Like who'd you add on first, and how big's the team now, and how's that going for you?
Yeah, the first was a leasing agent. I kind of alluded to when I was in the single family game, I hit the financial freedom number, but I was a leasing agent, asset manager, the person on call. I was doing the maintenance calls, I was doing everything, property management, et cetera. So that first person was the leasing agent. And so that's on the residential sector. Property manager, project manager, a couple crews going on one time, and then subcontracted for a lot of the other things too, but that's kind of the core of the operations. Once again, it's a pretty tiny team, me kind of spearheading, putting on the hats when I need to, asset management, construction management, different things like that. And then now investor relations, which is a whole nother game. It's really hard. But luckily, once again, I kept it fairly small until we're able to scale out and do larger things too. And then, yeah, that's kind of what the team looks like. I've picked up a couple JV partners too, some of the people that are bringing in some of that excellence when it comes to construction. A lot of people are better at that than I am. And so I think in the next year or so, I'll solidify a couple partners and then kind of really be able to scale from there.
Yeah, that's great, man. Very focused, intentional, and a humble man too. I think that's incredibly smart to bring people around you that are smarter than you and better than you. Because I mean, you can't be the best at it all. I think we all know that, and that's when people like try to commend me for my success, and I say, man, I'm extremely fortunate. The good Lord's given me a lot of gifts and abilities to go do great things, and I've just tried to step into that. But also like the people He's put around me. Serious blessing, man, and something I'm grateful for every single day. So, no, that's great, man, and this was a lot of fun. So, man, for everybody out there, like maybe a message to the audience, or like where can they connect with you? Where can they find you if they want to be an investor and get into some triple net leases? Like, man, where can they find you?
Yeah, so my name is Deren Huang, and the best way to reach me is my website, which is derenhuang.com, DERENHUANG.com. You can do two things there. One, I have a Calendly link, so you can immediately just book a one-on-one call with me, and I'll take on whoever, even if you're just having questions. So I love connecting with people. I can't shut up about industrial real estate. As you can tell, it's one of my highest convictions when it comes to real estate. And then the second thing is signing up for that newsletter. So that's where you get access to exclusive deals if you want to be a part of passively investing and just knowing what's happening specifically in the industrial market. I do some pieces on like the macroeconomics, but mostly it is in Tulsa, Oklahoma, where I'm trying to be extremely focused on. So those are two things that you can do to reach out to me, but would love any conversations about real estate. So yeah, head over there and check me out.
Awesome, man. Well, thank you so much. And I can piggyback and say I'm not invested yet into the Huang Enterprises and operations, but I do get the newsletter, and it's a good newsletter. So, yeah, you guys go sign up for that, grab that, and feel free to grab some time with Deren. Awesome guy and doing awesome things, man. So, man, thank you so much, and we'll see you next time.